It was a Monday morning when she walked into the office for the first time. Her name was Rena, and she had just been hired as a senior analyst at one of the most respected consulting firms in the city. She was 32 years old, calm in her demeanor, and carried herself with a quiet confidence that came from years of hard work. The office was impressive. Glass walls, expensive furniture, and people in suits rushing around with coffee cups in their hands. Rena had worked at smaller companies before, but this was different. This was the big league, and she had earned her place here. She found her desk, set down her bag, and took a deep breath. A new beginning, she thought. A fresh start. But what Rena didn't know was that someone had already decided she didn't belong here. His name was Vikram. He was a senior partner at the firm, somewhere in his mid-40s, and he had been with the company for over 15 years. Everyone knew him. Some respected him, many feared him. He had a reputation for being brilliant at his job, but also for being difficult to work with. He believed he was always the smartest person in the room, and he made sure everyone knew it. Vikram had a particular way of looking at people. When he looked at you, it felt like he was measuring you, deciding whether you were worth his time. Most people failed his test before they even opened their mouths. When he heard about the new hire, he wasn't impressed. A woman from a small consulting firm? In his department? He had seen this before. They come in with big dreams, struggle for a few months, and then quietly disappear. He gave her 3 months at most. The first team meeting happened on her second day. The conference room was filled with about 15 people, all waiting for the weekly update. Rena sat near the corner, notebook ready, trying to observe and learn. Vikram walked in 5 minutes late, as he always did. It was his way of showing that his time was more valuable than everyone else's. He scanned the room, and his eyes stopped on Rena. "Ah," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "The new addition, Rena, is it?" She nodded politely. "Yes. Good morning." He didn't return the greeting. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and smiled in a way that wasn't friendly at all. "I looked at your background," he said. "Your previous company. Decent work, I suppose. But this is a different environment. The pace here is faster. The expectations are higher. I hope you understand what you've signed up for." The room went quiet. A few people exchanged uncomfortable glances. This was typical Vikram behavior. But it was still awkward to witness. Rena felt the eyes of everyone on her. She could have responded with defensiveness. She could have tried to prove herself right there. But she didn't. Instead, she simply smiled and said, "I understand completely. I look forward to proving my value through my work." Vikram raised an eyebrow. He wasn't used to such calm responses. Most new hires would stammer or get nervous. This one was different. But he brushed it off. Confidence without substance meant nothing to him. "We'll see," he said, and moved on to other topics. After the meeting ended, a few colleagues came up to Rena quietly. One of them, a young man who had been at the firm for about 2 years, whispered to her, "Don't take it personally. He's like that with everyone. Just keep your head down and do your work." Rena thanked him for the advice, but inside, she made a mental note. She had dealt with people like Vikram before. They thrived on intimidation. They expected others to shrink in their presence, and when someone didn't shrink, it bothered them. Over the next few days, Rena focused on settling into her role. She learned the systems, studied past projects, and quietly observed the office dynamics. She noticed how people behaved around Vikram. They laughed at his jokes even when they weren't funny. They agreed with him even when they had doubts. Nobody wanted to be on his bad side. She also noticed something else. Vikram was watching her, not obviously, but she could feel it. He would glance at her during meetings. He would ask pointed questions about her work, trying to catch her off guard. He was testing her, waiting for her to make a mistake. On Friday of her first week, Vikram called her into his office. "Close the door," he said. She did, then sat down across from him. He pushed a folder across the desk. "This is your first assignment. A full market analysis for a potential client. Industry research, competitor breakdown, Financial projections. Everything. Rena opened the folder and scanned the contents. It was a massive project. The kind that would normally take a team of 3 analysts several weeks to complete. "When do you need it?" she asked. Vikram smiled. 10 days. 10 days. For a project that would realistically need a month. He was setting her up to fail. Rena looked at the folder, then looked at him. His expression was smug, almost amused. He was enjoying this. "All right," she said calmly. "I'll get it done." For a moment, surprise flickered across his face. He had expected her to protest, to ask for more time, to show weakness. But she didn't. "Good," he said, recovering quickly. Rena stood up, took the folder, and walked out without another word. That evening, she stayed late at the office. Most people had gone home, but she sat at her desk, reviewing the project requirements. The scope was enormous. The deadline was nearly impossible, but she had faced impossible before. She made a plan. She would work early mornings and late nights. She would be efficient with every hour. She would not complain, not ask for help, not give Vikram any excuse to criticize her. As she was leaving that night, she passed by the security guard at the front desk. He was an older man, with kind eyes, who had been working at the building for decades. "Late night already?" he asked with a friendly smile. Rena smiled back. "Just getting started." "New job?" "Yes. First week." He nodded knowingly. "The first few months are always the hardest. But you seem like someone who can handle it. Just don't let them break you." Rena thanked him and stepped out into the cool night air. As she walked to her car, she thought about his words. "Don't let them break you." It was simple advice, but it meant a lot. Vikram thought she was someone who could be pushed around. He thought she would crumble under pressure. He thought she would quietly disappear like others before her. But Vikram didn't know her story. He didn't know about the struggles she had faced to get here. He didn't know about the years of working twice as hard to get half the recognition. He didn't know about the people who had underestimated her before, and how wrong they had all been. She got into her car and sat there for a moment in silence. This wasn't just about a project. This wasn't just about a promotion or a job. This was about something bigger. It was about standing her ground. It was about refusing to be dismissed. Vikram wanted to prove his superiority. He wanted to show everyone that she didn't belong. But Rena had other plans. She started the car and drove home, her mind already working on the task ahead. The game had begun, and she intended to win. The next 10 days were brutal. Rena worked like she had never worked before. She arrived at the office before anyone else, and left long after the lights in most cubicles had gone dark. Her desk became a battlefield of spreadsheets, reports, and coffee cups, but she never complained. Not once. Vikram watched from a distance. He expected her to crack. He expected her to come to him asking for more time, more resources, more help. But she never did, and that bothered him more than he wanted to admit. On the 10th day, exactly at 5 in the evening, Rena walked into Vikram's office. She placed a thick folder on his desk. "The market analysis," she said. "Complete. Every section you asked for." Vikram looked at the folder, then at her. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he picked it up and started flipping through the pages. His expression remained neutral, but his eyes moved quickly. He was looking for mistakes. He was searching for anything he could criticize. After a long pause, he set the folder down. "I'll review it," he said coldly. "You can go." No thank you. No acknowledgement of the impossible deadline she had met. Just dismissal. Rena nodded and walked out. She didn't expect gratitude. She knew the kind of person she was dealing with. 2 days later, the project was presented to the client. Vikram took the lead, as he always did. He spoke confidently, used all the data Rena had gathered, and impressed everyone in the room. When the client praised the thoroughness of the analysis, Vikram smiled and accepted the compliment without mentioning Rena's name even once. She sat in the corner of the room, watching. She wasn't surprised, but she filed this moment away in her memory. It was just one of many. After the meeting, one of the clients approached her directly. "You worked on this, didn't you?" he asked. Rena nodded. "Excellent work," he said. "Very thorough." Before she could respond, Vikram appeared beside them, smoothly inserting himself into the conversation. "Rena is still learning," he said with a practiced smile. "But yes, she contributed. We're a team here." The client nodded and moved on. Vikram glanced at Rena with a look that said, "Know your place." She said nothing. But inside, something hardened. Over the following weeks, Vikram's behavior became more calculated. He began a quiet campaign to undermine her. It wasn't obvious at first. It was subtle, careful, designed to chip away at her reputation without leaving fingerprints. First, it was the meetings. Rena would find out about important discussions after they had already happened. When she asked why she wasn't informed, colleagues would shrug and say, "I thought you knew." But she didn't know, because somehow, the meeting invites never reached her. Then, it was the resources. She would request access to certain databases or reports, only to find her requests delayed or denied. When she followed up, she was told there were technical issues or approval pending. But other analysts seemed to have no such problems. Then came the whispers. She started noticing how certain colleagues looked at her differently. Conversations would stop when she entered the break room. She overheard fragments here and there. "Not experienced enough. Doesn't fit in. Vikram has concerns." Rena understood what was happening. She had seen it before, at previous jobs, with other bullies. They never attacked directly. They worked in shadows, spreading doubt, turning people against you while keeping their own hands clean. But Rena was not the kind of person who panicked. She was the kind who planned. She started keeping records. Every missed meeting, she noted the date and time. Every delayed request, she saved the emails. Every strange comment, she wrote down. She wasn't sure when she would need this information, but she knew that one day, it might matter. She also started paying attention to the people around her. Not everyone in the office was loyal to Vikram. Some were simply afraid of him. Others had their own grievances but were too scared to speak up. One of them was Arjun, a young analyst who had joined the firm about a year before Rena. He was talented but timid, and Vikram often used him as a punching bag in meetings, criticizing his work publicly and making him look incompetent. Arjun never fought back. He just took it, day after day. One afternoon, Rena found Arjun sitting alone in the cafeteria, staring at his phone with a defeated expression. She sat down across from him. "Rough day?" He looked up, surprised that she was talking to him. Most senior people didn't bother with junior analysts. "Something like that," he said quietly. Rena didn't push. She just sat there, eating her lunch, giving him space. After a few minutes, he started talking on his own. "I've been thinking about quitting," he admitted. "I can't do this anymore. No matter what I do, it's never good enough. He makes me feel like I'm worthless." Rena listened without interrupting. "You're not worthless," she said finally. "And you're not alone." Arjun looked at her, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of hope in his eyes. From that day on, they became quiet allies. Arjun started sharing information with her. He told her about patterns he had noticed. How Vikram manipulated people. How he took credit for others' work. How he had pushed out at least 3 employees in the past 2 years, all of them women or younger staff. Rena also connected with Priya, one of the HR managers. Priya was professional and careful with her words, but Rena could tell she was frustrated too. There had been complaints about Vikram before, but nothing ever stuck. He was too valuable to the company, too connected to the leadership. People were afraid to challenge him. "I've seen this pattern," Priya admitted one day in a private conversation. "But I need evidence. Real, solid evidence. Without that, my hands are tied." Rena nodded. She understood. The weeks turned into months. Rena continued to do excellent work, meeting every deadline, impressing clients, building a quiet reputation for reliability and competence. But Vikram refused to acknowledge any of it. In his eyes, she was still the outsider, the small league hire who didn't deserve to be there. Then came the announcement. The company was promoting someone to the position of associate director. It was a big step up, with more responsibility, more visibility, and a seat at the leadership table. Several people were eligible, and everyone knew it would come down to a competitive evaluation. Vikram, of course, nominated himself. He had been eyeing this position for a while, and he was confident it was his to take. But then something unexpected happened. The leadership team announced that Reena was also being considered for the same position. When Vikram heard the news, his face went pale for just a moment. Then his expression shifted to something darker. Confidence mixed with anger. He found Reena in the hallway later that day. "So," he said, his voice low. Reena met his gaze without flinching. "I think my work speaks for itself." Vikram smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who had already decided how this would end. "We'll see," he said. "May the best person win." He walked away, and Reena watched him go. She knew what was coming. He wouldn't just compete fairly. He would do everything in his power to destroy her chances. He would lie, manipulate, and cheat if he had to. But what Vikram didn't realize was that Reena had been preparing for this moment. She had the documentation, she had the allies, she had the truth, and she was ready to play. The promotion process officially began the following Monday. Both Reena and Vikram were given the same task. They had to prepare a pitch for a major potential client. The executive board would evaluate both presentations and decide who was more deserving of the associate director position. It was a fair process on paper. But Reena knew better than to expect fairness when Vikram was involved. She threw herself into the work. She spent hours researching the client's industry, understanding their pain points, and crafting a strategy that was both innovative and practical. She worked late nights and early mornings, refining every slide, every word, every data point. This was her chance, and she wasn't going to waste it. Meanwhile, Vikram was busy too. But not in the way anyone expected. He had connections everywhere. People who owed him favors. People who were afraid of him. People who would do small things for him without asking questions. And he used those connections to get something he shouldn't have had. Access to Reena's presentation files. It happened through a junior IT staff member who Vikram had helped get his job years ago. The young man didn't think much of it. Vikram said he just wanted to review the overall progress of both candidates. It seemed harmless. So he gave Vikram temporary access to the shared drive where Reena had saved her draft. Vikram spent an entire evening going through her work. And what he saw made him nervous. Her pitch was good. Really good. Better than anything he had prepared. She had fresh ideas, solid data, and a compelling narrative. If she presented this to the board, she would win. He was sure of it. So he did what he always did when he felt threatened. He cheated. He took key elements of her strategy. The unique angles she had developed. The data visualizations she had created. The structure of her argument. He copied them into his own presentation, reworked the language slightly, and planned to present first. That way, when Reena presented after him, it would look like she had copied him instead of the other way around. It was a dirty trick. But Vikram didn't care. Winning was all that mattered. What he didn't know was that Reena had a guardian angel watching over her. Arjun, the young analyst she had befriended months ago, happened to notice something strange. He saw Vikram accessing files late at night from a computer that wasn't his usual workstation. It seemed odd, so Arjun quietly checked the access logs the next morning. What he found shocked him. He immediately told Reena. When she heard what had happened, her first reaction was anger. Pure, burning anger. Months of being undermined, dismissed, and sabotaged. And now this. He was stealing her work right before the most important presentation of her career. But then she took a deep breath. And she thought, getting angry wouldn't help. Confronting him directly would just give him a chance to cover his tracks. She needed to be smarter than that, so she made a decision. Instead of fighting the theft, she would use it against him. She had 3 days before the presentation. In those 3 days, She completely rebuilt her pitch from scratch. She kept the core research but changed the approach entirely. She developed new strategies, new frameworks, new ideas that were even stronger than before. She worked around the clock, surviving on coffee and determination. By the night before the presentation, she had something truly special. Something Vikram had never seen. Something he couldn't possibly prepare for. She also made one more move. She reached out to one of the board members she had quietly built a relationship with over the past few months. His name was Mr. Rao, a senior executive who had a reputation for fairness and integrity. Without accusing anyone directly, Reena mentioned that she had concerns about the evaluation process. She asked him to pay close attention to both presentations and draw his own conclusions. Mr. Rao listened carefully. He didn't make any promises, but he thanked her for her honesty. The day of the presentation arrived. The boardroom was filled with the company's top leadership. 10 people who would decide the future of both candidates. The atmosphere was tense, formal, and heavy with expectation. Vikram presented first. He walked in with his usual confidence, his expensive suit perfectly pressed, his smile perfectly practiced. He had rehearsed his stolen presentation dozens of times. He knew every word, every transition, every pause for effect, and he delivered it well. His slides were polished. His data looked impressive. His recommendations sounded smart. The board members nodded along, taking notes, asking occasional questions. When he finished, there was polite applause. Vikram smiled and took his seat, looking satisfied. He glanced at Reena with a look that said, "Try to beat that." Then it was her turn. Reena stood up, smoothed her jacket, and walked to the front of the room. She could feel everyone's eyes on her. She could feel Vikram's smugness radiating from across the table. She took a breath and began. From the very first slide, it was clear that something was different. Her presentation wasn't just good. It was exceptional. She opened with a bold statement that grabbed attention immediately. She told a story about the client's challenges that felt personal and urgent. She presented data in ways that were fresh and easy to understand. As she moved through her pitch, the energy in the room shifted. Board members leaned forward. They stopped checking their phones. They started asking engaged questions, not to challenge her, but because they were genuinely curious. Reena answered every question with clarity and confidence. She didn't stumble. She didn't hesitate. She spoke like someone who truly understood the client, the market, and the path forward. When she finished, the applause was louder than it had been for Vikram. Not dramatically so, but enough to notice. And then came the moment that changed everything. Mr. Rao, the senior board member, spoke up. "I have a question," he said, looking at Vikram. "Some elements of your presentation felt familiar. The framework you used, the way you structured your recommendations. I've seen similar approaches in rejected proposals from the past. Can you walk us through how you developed this strategy?" Vikram's smile faltered. Just for a second, but Reena saw it. "I developed it independently," he said smoothly. "Based on my years of experience in the industry." Mr. Rao nodded slowly but didn't look convinced. He turned to Reena. "And your presentation was quite different. More innovative, I would say. How did you arrive at this approach?" Reena kept her voice calm. "I started with thorough research and then built a strategy from the ground up. I wanted to bring something fresh to the table. Something that would stand out." She didn't accuse Vikram of anything. She didn't need to. The contrast between their presentations spoke for itself. The board called for a short break. Vikram sat frozen in his chair. His mind was racing. How had this happened? He had stolen her best ideas. He had presented first. He should have won easily. But her new presentation had made his look outdated, unoriginal, almost lazy. He had prepared for a competition against her old pitch. He never expected her to change everything at the last minute. He looked across the table at Reena. She was sipping water calmly, chatting with a colleague as if nothing unusual had happened. And in that moment, he realized something terrifying. She had known. She had known what he did, and instead of fighting him, She had outplayed him. The trap he had set for her had snapped shut around his own neck. And the board had seen everything. The break lasted 15 minutes, but to Vikram, it felt like hours. He sat in his chair, pretending to check his phone, but his mind was spinning. He kept replaying the moment when Mr. Rao asked that question, the way the old man's eyes had narrowed. The way he had said the word familiar, like it was an accusation wrapped in politeness. Did they know? Could they possibly know? No, he told himself. There was no proof. He had been careful. The IT guy wouldn't talk. There was nothing connecting him to her files. He just needed to stay calm and ride this out. When the board returned, the atmosphere in the room had changed. It was subtle, but Vikram could feel it. The easy smiles were gone. People were looking at him differently now. With curiosity, with suspicion. The CEO, a sharp woman in her 50s named Mrs. Kapoor, took charge of the discussion. "Thank you both for your presentations," she said. "Before we move to the final decision, I'd like to ask a few follow-up questions. Vikram, let's start with you." Vikram straightened in his chair and forced a confident smile. "Of course. Happy to clarify anything." Mrs. Kapoor looked down at her notes. "Your proposal included a very specific framework for market entry. A 3-phase rollout with staggered regional launches. Can you tell us where this idea came from?" Vikram nodded smoothly. "It's based on my experience with similar clients over the years. I've seen what works and what doesn't. This approach minimizes risk while maximizing early wins." "Interesting," Mrs. Kapoor said, "because we reviewed a proposal you submitted 2 years ago for a different client. The approach there was completely different. Much more aggressive, all at once, market entry. What changed your thinking?" Vikram hesitated. Just for a second. But everyone noticed. "Markets evolve," he said. "I adapt my strategies based on current conditions." Mrs. Kapoor nodded but didn't look satisfied. She turned to Mr. Rao. "You had some additional observations?" Mr. Rao leaned forward. "Yes. I took the liberty of comparing some timestamps during the break. Reena, I hope you don't mind, but I asked our IT department to pull the access logs for the shared project drive." The room went very still. Vikram felt his stomach drop. "What I found was interesting, Mr. Rao continued. 3 days ago, someone accessed Reena's presentation files from a workstation that wasn't assigned to her. The access happened at 11:30 at night, well after normal office hours." He paused, letting the implication hang in the air. "I'm not making any accusations, Mr. Rao said carefully. "But I think it's worth understanding how 2 candidates working independently arrived at such similar core concepts, especially when one of those concepts appeared in Reena's files days before it appeared in Vikram's." All eyes turned to Vikram. His face had gone pale. He opened his mouth to speak, but for once, no smooth words came out. "There must be some mistake," he finally managed. "I never accessed her files. Someone else must have used that workstation." "Perhaps," Mr. Rao said, "but the login credentials used were yours." Silence. Vikram's mind raced. He needed to turn this around. He needed to shift the blame somewhere. Anywhere. He looked at Reena, and something dark flashed in his eyes. "This is ridiculous," he said, his voice rising. "She's clearly trying to sabotage me. She probably set this up herself to make me look bad. I've been with this company for 15 years. 15 years of dedicated service, and you're going to take the word of someone who's been here barely 6 months?" Mrs. Kapoor raised an eyebrow. "No one is taking anyone's word. We're looking at data. Access logs don't lie. Logs can be manipulated." Vikram shot back. "Maybe someone in IT has a grudge against me. Maybe she convinced someone to help her. Have you considered that?" Reena had remained silent throughout this exchange. She sat calmly, her hands folded on the table, watching Vikram unravel. Part of her felt a grim satisfaction. Part of her felt sad. This was a man who had everything going for him. talent, experience, position, and he was throwing it all away because he couldn't stand the idea of someone else succeeding. Mrs. Kapoor turned to her. "Reena, do you have anything to add?" Reena nodded slowly. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. The same folder she had been building for months. "I didn't want it to come to this," she said quietly. "But since questions have been raised, I think the board should see the full picture." She handed the folder to Mrs. Kapoor. "This is a record of my time at this company," Reena explained. "It includes emails showing meeting invites that were deleted before reaching me, screenshots of resource requests that were blocked without explanation, statements from colleagues who witnessed inappropriate behavior, and documentation of other instances where my work was presented without credit." The room was dead silent. Mrs. Kapoor flipped through the pages slowly. Her expression grew more serious with each page. Vikram watched in disbelief. His confident mask was crumbling. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She was supposed to be the one humiliated. Not him. She was supposed to fail. Not him. "This is all fabricated," he said, but his voice had lost its power. "She's lying. She's been planning this from the beginning." "Planning what exactly?" Mr. Rao asked calmly. "Planning to document mistreatment? Planning to keep records of being undermined? That's not sabotage, Vikram. That's self-preservation." Vikram stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I don't have to sit here and listen to this," he said. His voice was shaking now. Not with fear, but with anger. Raw, uncontrolled anger. "I built this department. I brought in clients that kept this company alive. And this is how you treat me? By believing some outsider over me?" He pointed at Reena. "You think you're so clever, don't you? You think you've won something here? You have no idea who you're dealing with." The threat hung in the air like poison. Mrs. Kapoor stood up slowly. Her voice was ice cold. "Vikram, I suggest you stop talking. Right now." But Vikram was too far gone to listen. Years of unchecked arrogance and entitlement came pouring out. "This company would be nothing without me," he spat. "Nothing. And you're going to regret this. All of you." He grabbed his jacket and stormed toward the door. Before leaving, he turned back one last time and looked at Reena. "This isn't over," he said. Then he was gone. The door slammed behind him, and the sound echoed through the silent boardroom. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Mrs. Kapoor sighed and sat back down. She looked at the other board members, then at Reena. "Well," she said quietly, "I think we've seen everything we need to see." Mr. Rao nodded. "The presentation results speak for themselves. But more importantly, character matters. And we just witnessed a very clear display of character from both candidates." Reena didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She just sat there, feeling the weight of the moment settle over her. She had come to this company hoping for a fresh start. She had faced obstacles she never expected. She had been underestimated, undermined, and attacked at every turn. But she hadn't broken. She hadn't stooped to his level. She had played the game with patience, with integrity, and with strength. And now, finally, the truth was out. Mrs. Kapoor closed the folder and looked at Reena with something that resembled respect. "We'll be in touch very soon," she said. "Thank you for your professionalism today." It did not go unnoticed. Reena nodded and quietly gathered her things. As she walked out of the boardroom, she passed by the empty chair where Vikram had been sitting. The game wasn't quite over yet. But for the first time since she arrived at this company, she knew she was going to be okay. More than okay. She was going to win. The call came 2 days later. Reena was at her desk, finishing up a report, when her phone rang. It was Mrs. Kapoor's assistant, asking her to come to the CEO's office immediately. She took a deep breath, straightened her clothes, and made the walk down the long hallway. Her heart was beating fast, but her steps were steady. Whatever happened next, she was ready for it. When she entered the office, Mrs. Kapoor was sitting behind her large wooden desk. Mr. Rao was there too, along with Priya from HR. They all looked serious but not unkind. "Please, sit down," Mrs. Kapoor said, gesturing to the chair across from her. Reena sat. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Mrs. Kapoor smiled. It was a small smile, but it was genuine. "Congratulations, Reena. The board has unanimously decided to offer you the position of associate director." The words took a second to sink in. Reena blinked, then felt a wave of emotion rise in her chest. Relief, gratitude, vindication. All of it mixed together. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything, Mr. Rao said warmly. "Your work spoke for itself. And so did your character." Mrs. Kapoor leaned forward. "I want to be honest with you, Reena. What happened in that boardroom was deeply troubling to all of us. Not just the presentation issue, but everything that came to light afterward. We reviewed your documentation thoroughly. We also spoke with several employees who corroborated your experiences." She paused. "We failed you. This company allowed a toxic environment to exist for far too long. That's on us. And I want you to know that we're committed to making things right." Reena nodded slowly. She appreciated the honesty. It meant more than any apology could. "What happens now?" she asked. "With Vikram, I mean." Priya spoke up. "A formal review has been conducted, based on the evidence, including the access logs, the documentation you provided, and statements from other employees. Vikram has been given 2 options. He can resign immediately with a neutral reference, or he can face termination with cause, which would go on his permanent record. He chose to resign," Mrs. Kapoor added. "Effective immediately. He cleared out his desk this morning." Reena felt a strange mix of emotions. There was satisfaction, yes, but also something like sadness. Vikram had been a talented man. He could have achieved so much if he had just treated people with respect. Instead, his arrogance and cruelty had destroyed everything he built. "I didn't want it to end this way," Reena said honestly. "I just wanted to do my job." Mrs. Kapoor nodded. "I know. And that's exactly why you deserve this promotion. You handled an impossible situation with grace and integrity. Not everyone could have done that." The meeting ended with handshakes and congratulations. As Reena walked back to her desk, she felt lighter than she had in months. The weight she had been carrying, the constant stress of being watched, judged, undermined, it was finally lifting. Word spread quickly through the office. By lunchtime, everyone knew about the promotion and about Vikram's sudden departure. The reactions were mixed. Some people were shocked, some were relieved, a few quietly celebrated. Arjun was the first to find her. He came to her desk with a huge grin on his face. "You did it," he said. "I can't believe you actually did it," Reena smiled. "We did it. I couldn't have done this without you. You took a risk by telling me about the files. That took courage." Arjun shrugged, but she could see he was proud. "He made my life miserable for a year. Watching him finally face consequences, that was worth any risk." Throughout the day, other colleagues stopped by. Some offered congratulations. Others apologized for not speaking up sooner. A few admitted they had believed the rumors Vikram spread and felt ashamed for doubting her. Reena accepted it all graciously. She didn't hold grudges. She understood how fear worked, how it could silence people and make them complicit in things they knew were wrong. The important thing was that they were speaking up now. One person who didn't come by was Vikram. She heard he had left the building early that morning, carrying a single box of belongings. No goodbye to anyone. No final words. Just a quiet, humiliating exit after 15 years. She wondered what he was feeling. Anger, probably. Resentment. Maybe even denial. Men like Vikram rarely accepted responsibility for their own failures. In his mind, he would always be the victim, brought down by jealous rivals and ungrateful colleagues. But that was his burden to carry, not hers. The following weeks were busy. Reena transitioned into her new role, taking on more responsibilities, leading larger projects, and building her team. She approached leadership differently than Vikram had. She listened to her team members. She gave credit where it was due. She created an environment where people felt safe to share ideas and make mistakes. The results showed quickly. Morale improved. Productivity increased. Clients noticed the positive change in energy during meetings. One afternoon, about a month after her promotion, Rena received an unexpected email. It was from a former colleague at her old company. Someone she hadn't spoken to in years. The message was short. It said that Vikram had applied for a senior position at their firm. The colleague wanted to know if Rena had any thoughts before they made a decision. Rena stared at the screen for a long time. She could have said so many things. She could have warned them about his behavior, shared the details of what he had done, and made sure he never got another good job again. But she didn't. Instead, she wrote back a simple response. She said she couldn't comment on his character or qualifications, only that they should do thorough reference checks and trust their own judgment. It wasn't her job to punish him forever. He would have to live with his choices. And if he hadn't learned anything from this experience, he would eventually destroy himself again without any help from her. She closed the email and moved on with her day. 6 months later, the company held its quarterly review meeting. The numbers were in, and they were impressive. Rena's division had outperformed every projection. Revenue was up, client satisfaction was at an all-time high. The team she had built was thriving. Mrs. Kapoor made a point of acknowledging her contribution in front of the entire leadership team. When we promoted Rena to associate director, some people wondered if it was the right call. She said, "I think the results speak for themselves. She has brought not just competence, but integrity and humanity to her role, and that has made all the difference." There was applause. Rena smiled and thanked everyone. But she didn't let the praise go to her head. She knew that success was fragile. It required constant effort, constant humility, constant care for the people around you. After the meeting, she returned to her office. On her desk was a small plant that Arjun had given her as a congratulations gift when she first got promoted. It had grown significantly since then, its leaves green and healthy. She touched one of the leaves gently and smiled. There was a knock at her door. A young woman stood there nervously. She was new to the company, fresh out of college, starting her first real job. "Excuse me," the young woman said. "I'm Mira. I just joined the analyst team. Someone told me you might have some advice for someone just starting out." Rena looked at her and saw a reflection of herself from not so long ago. Eager, uncertain, hopeful. She gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Come in," she said warmly. "Sit down. Let's talk." And as Mira sat down, Rena made a silent promise to herself. She would never let anyone go through what she went through. Not if she could help it. She would use her position to protect, to mentor, to lift others up, because that was the real victory. Not the promotion, not the title, not watching Vikram fall. The real victory was building something better. Something lasting. Something that would help others long after she was gone. And that was exactly what she intended to do.